Have you ever met or do you know someone that once you meet them, you just know they were meant to do what they do? There's just this kind of energy, a confidence, or whatever it is. They were just meant to do what they do, and you just feel it. Well, in today's episode, Pippa Ehrlich, she joins me, and what a pleasure this episode was for me, and I'm pretty positive it's going to be a pleasure for you too. Now, Pippa was a director on some of my favorite documentaries: My Octopus Teacher, Pangolin Story's Journey, My Mercury, and if you didn't see any of these or just missed one of them, you really need to go see them. They're amazing. Now, there's more to come because this wildling, my name for her, by the way, has a lot to tell. Now, we really get into the backstories and the making of these amazing films, but that's just the tip of it because her films bring awareness to the environment, animals, and the impact we humans have on all of it. Now, having grown up on the water, I've always said, I need my water fix. Now, Pippa says the water and just being out in the wild really gives her that energy and awareness. It's really what makes her so special. Now, we talk about the Sea Change Project and how Craig Foster, one of the founders of the project, and their friendship has taken her to free diving and the project itself. As a matter of fact, because of that, she, for several years now, has been really involved in the important work that they do. Did you know there's a forest of kelp just off the coast in South Africa? It's called the South African Kelp Forest. Now, having grown up in California, I've had the chance to dive in kelp, but the kelp I'm familiar with is really different than to what they have in South Africa because that kelp is gigantic. It's more like bamboo, not those little round little bulbs that I used to typically see in California. Now, here's a crazy tidbit. 1,000, you heard me right, 1,000 species can live off of one strand of kelp. Yeah, one kelp. But there's so much more. Now, I'm in awe and inspired by everything she does and what she aspires to do. So get ready, because of this special guest, you may just look at the ocean and the life within it a little bit different and in a much better way.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and games, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Markakyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to this For Real podcast. Today is one we've been really trying to get together. Please welcome Pippa Ehrlich. She's my new best friend, and I can't wait to talk to her. Pippa, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So everybody's going to know by the description, but I really want to get into you. And, what's one of the reasons, I found you in a weird sort of way because My Octopus Teacher was one of my favorite movies or documentaries ever. And then I saw that the pangolin, and then when I started digging into it, I realized this director was the same, or co-director, and was in the same person. It was you, and that's why I reached out because I love both of them very much. And there's a lot of reasons we haven't talked about it yet, but pangolins actually, I've seen one in the wild, which is one of those rare things most people haven't done.
Yeah, you're very lucky.
Yeah, so I want to talk about you first because the documentaries I've seen three of them, and they're all had kind of the same similar thing. And I'll get into what I mean by that in a second. But I want to talk about you and how you got where you are, where you grew up. I know where you are right now, but let's let the audience know and talk about when from a young girl going up to where you are now, because you've lived a pretty interesting life.
So I grew up in South Africa. I've lived here my whole life, and I love it. But I was born in Johannesburg, which is the biggest city in the country, but it's also completely landlocked, and it's kind of big and sprawling and beautiful trees, but very little wild space anywhere. And I think I didn't know it at the time, but I think I found that really, really stressful. And I was extremely lucky. We had a big garden growing up. Um, yeah, I mean, I was an incredibly privileged kid looking back because we had a big garden. My parents took us to the Kruger Park at least once or twice a year, and we went to the beach probably 2 or 3 times a year. And I could completely track the difference in my mood um, when I was in those spaces in comparison to how I felt in the city.
Well, I was going to tell you, I know this without even you telling it, is that I grew up around the water, and, matter of fact, I was just out in California, where I grew up, and if I'm not in saltwater some period of time, it's unbelievable. When I get in saltwater, I'm just like a sea creature. I just feel so much better, and that energy or whatever's in the water is really important to me. So I know for a fact it's for you without you telling me.
Yeah, very much so. And all water. My grandmother used to say that whenever I was upset as a child, she just put me in the bath. um, yeah, I love swimming. I love being underwater. Um, but I think from a very young age, I kind of had the sense of how much better I felt when I was close to kind of wild nature and what a powerful impact it had on my nervous system. And I think that's why I've been drawn to these stories about characters who are looking for some form of purpose and healing in the natural world.
And that makes a lot of sense. One of the things, for me, what I love about the films that I've seen that you've done, and I want to keep going, how you got to what you're doing, but everything has a really it's heart driven in a lot of ways. And that's another thing that attracted to me getting a hold of you, because I just love what you're doing. And I love the direction you're going. There's so many things I could just tell you that I just absolutely just love. So,
Thank you.
but it's true though, and the reason why My Octopus Teacher did so well was because that story was heart wrenching in a lot of ways, but it's certainly something that I think resonated with everybody, obviously for a lot of reasons. But let's get back to you though. And I could. By the way, if we could talk for days about all the stuff you're doing, to be honest with you. But I want to talk about you. So you always knew it. Your grandparents knew it. So what's next? How did you start getting to do what you really love doing?
So I went to university in a very tiny rural town called Makanda in the Eastern Cape in South Africa. And for the first time in my life, I could just like get on my bicycle and cycle out into totally kind of into it wasn't wilderness, it was farmland, but it was quiet. And after that, I started traveling and I saw some really amazing things and went to beautiful places. I mean, first I went to America, and I remember feeling pretty shocked
What
by what I saw there.
do you mean?
I mean, I guess it's just South Africa is so much wilder in every way.
Right.
Even the national parks here, you're lucky. There'll be amazing hiking trails, for example, but you don't always know where the path goes, and things aren't that clearly signposted, and there aren't too many rules, and often not too many people. Um, and I'd never been somewhere as developed as the US. And I was kind of like shocked by you'd arrive somewhere to be in nature, and there were just masses of queues of people and very well defined boundaries for how you did everything. And yeah, I'd just never been exposed to that. And then, but everything was kind of, because of those rules and boundaries, things that are protected well. And then on the opposite end of the scale, I spent time in Southeast Asia and walked for 4 or 5 days on the border of Laos and China, for example. And in those 4 or 5 days, I don't think I saw a single bird,
Wow.
not one. And I found that absolutely shocking and heart wrenching. And I kind of came back to South Africa and just realized how really grateful I am to be here. And I guess I just started noticing how alive everything is, and I never took it for granted again. Um, and then I wanted to get into wildlife filmmaking, but it's very hard in South Africa. There's not a ladder that you can climb. If I'd known, I would have gone somewhere like Bristol, or maybe tried to get a job in DC, which is where the American Center for Wildlife Filmmaking was.
Well, hold on for a second. When did you know? How did you know you wanted to do wildlife filmmaking? First of all, I was thinking when you were talking, I'm going to start calling you a wildling. I think that's what you are, is a wildling.
You're not the first person who's called me that.
Oh, really? Well, see, there we go. But that's a great thing, though.
I like it. I mean, I'm not crazy about the Game of Thrones reference, but other than that, I like it.
No, it has nothing to do with the Game of Thrones reference. By the way, I'm one of the few Americans. I bet you read when you were growing up, you read Wilbur Smith.
I did, and I've got mixed feelings, but I did. I sure did.
Oh, well, I know why you have mixed feelings, but, I liked, Monsoon's probably one of my favorite books of all time, but I've read every single book he's written, every one of them. Anyways.
Yeah,
Oh, I should have forewarned you, and the listeners know, my head bounces all over the place. Remember I was talking about my son being ADHD? Now you
yeah.
know
Stop
where
it.
he got it from. I'm so sorry. But anyways, back to you. So the filmmaking thing, you wanted to go in there was no ladder, but you created your own rope and climbed up?
Well, not really. I mean, so the first thing I had a boyfriend at the time who was an incredible waterman, and he got me into freediving, and that just changed my life. Um, and that became a big focus for me. And because of that, I got in touch with an organization called Save Our Seas Foundation, and I knew a couple of people there, and so I was actually working in an advertising job in Joburg and hating every minute. And this job came up on Facebook, and I was just very lucky. I got a job with Save Our Seas Foundation, and I became their in-house journalist, and it was really cool. I spent all day, every day, either on Skype talking to some of the most incredible marine biologists in the world, or I was sent off on assignments, and I would just be sent to really beautiful places, and I'd go diving with sharks, and I'd work with marine biologists, and I got this kind of crash course in science and starting to understand, I guess, how the ocean works, and particularly what the threats are for sharks and rays. I'm still pretty obsessed with sharks and rays, and through that, I ended up meeting a guy called Craig Foster who took me on this crazy dive with no wetsuit.
And the water's cold there.
The water's cold. Yeah, I mean the water's quite similar to California.
Okay, so it's not that cold, but it's cold.
Yeah, I don't understand Fahrenheit, but I mean it's between 10 and 16 degrees Celsius. It does get a bit warmer in summer.
Yeah, because like I said, I was just out in California, and guess where I was? I was in the ocean. But typically in the summer, in Fahrenheit 68, but it can get down to, depends on what part of California you are, but it can be like in the 50s too. In the summer, 68
Yeah. And I mean, I think when I started, it was in the 50s. It's quite scary. It feels like
and cold.
it's not getting as cold as it used to.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into that because I'm going to talk about Sea Change Project for a lot of reasons. But one question on your free diving. So, are you still free diving, and how long can you hold your breath? That's the first question that comes to everybody's mouth.
Everybody who's ever interviewed me has asked that question. So I'm still free diving. After this call, I'm going free diving.
Show off.
But I'm not looking forward to it because my cold resistance is not what it used to be. And I can't in warmer environments it's easier, but a really long dive would be like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
That's a long time.
Yeah. But on land, you can hold your breath a lot longer. And I think anyone who's listening would be surprised if they did a couple of freediving, like breathwork exercises, and they just did it lying on the floor in their lounge. They'd be really surprised how long they could hold their breath and how quickly they'd be able to improve their breath hold. It's like one of the things we're designed to do as humans.
Yeah, because there's some guy or some course that you can take here in the US. I've always wanted to do it. I just wanted to, I'm ultra competitive, so obviously I'm gonna stay down as long as I can. But didn't somebody just set some record like 7 minutes or something like that in some new
I
dive?
don't know.
Yeah, some crazy, crazy amount.
I think it's longer than that. I mean, I think David Blaine did a lot longer than that. But I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, but like I said, I'm sorry. I bounce you off on everything. This is how I am, so I apologize. But so anyway, you're doing this stuff, and so when you're getting that cold water, do
Mm,
you have to acclimate over a period of time? And you get to the point where you just get used to it after a while.
yes.
Okay, cool.
But then, yeah. So, kind of when I was starting, I'd force myself to stay in for 20 minutes and it would be really hard. But by the time I started making Octopus Teacher, we were filming, which makes it easier because you're focused. But I mean, we were doing dives of an hour and a half in 10-degree water. Uh,
Which is like, I think 10 degrees is like 40 or 40 something or something like that's crazy.
I don't, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But it's a fitness thing. So you get used to it, and then you don't do it for a while, and your body loses its ability.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FURREALPODCAST, covered by most pet insurance.
Before we get into Octopus Teacher and the Pangolin Story too, let's talk about Sea Change Project, because that's where you were working with that guy. And I want to talk a lot about that. And I want to also ask you about the Great African Seaforest, which, by the way, what a great name. Anybody that's been in any kelp bed, you can kind of get it. And it's wild.
My colleague Swati, who's married to Craig Foster, she came up with that name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so I've never, because, again, like I said, there's a lot of kelp in California, but the bamboo kelp, I'd never even heard of this. So is it real thick, like a bamboo kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's really cool. And I think that's one of the things I love about kelp forests. Wherever you dive in one, they've got a completely different feeling. So California's kelp forests are like really, really long, and the leaves are kind of wispy, and
Right.
everything's kind of pastely. The light's being diffused, but not in hard, sharp lines like you get in South Africa's kelp forest. I think it's called the only truly floating kelp forest. So what happens in California is you've got these very, very long strands of giant kelp,
Right.
and they're being floated by little bladders.
Right.
So little balls. Yeah. Our kelp is literally like bamboo. So it's hollow, so it's buoyant the whole way through.
Oh, wow.
And it's got a big blade on the end, and that's what the leaves grow out of. And they're very, very thick, long kelp leaves, and they kind of move with the swell. So that's why you get that beautiful effect where you get these kind of light rays coming in from the surface that are very well defined, and you feel like you're in a church.
Well, you are in a church.
You are in a church, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I've dived in Chile off the coast of the Atacama Desert, and they've got a completely different kelp species. I can't remember the name now, but it's also incredibly beautiful. It's like a magical forest. It's like diving through a very, very dense, short woodland area. The trees, well, they're not trees, but the kelp plants are about 3 meters tall only. So you really are like crawling along the bottom, and they've got hard upright stems.
So you use the word, again, we're getting to know each other, but I totally believe in magic in a weird sort of way. And when you say it's a magical force, it totally resonates with me, because that's what it is. It is magic.
It is magic. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of magic in the world when you start to notice it.
Especially when you're a wildling.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyways, anyways, let's talk a little bit more about Sea Change Project, because I think it's an important subject. I've dug into it a little bit doing my homework, but I don't know enough, and I think everybody should be aware of what's going on. And it's funny is every time I talk, one of the advantages I have, and luckily you get to do the same thing by what you're doing, but I get to talk to people like yourself, or people that are experts in whatever field they're in. and everything right now is being affected by climate change. And obviously, you guys are having it there in my new favorite place, the Great African Seaforest that has bamboo in it that's in the water.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about everything that they're doing and how it's affecting the magical forest?
So, Sea Change Project is the organization that I'm a part of. It was co-founded by Craig Foster more than 10 years ago. And for a long time, it was just like a bunch of us who were friends and diving buddies. Some of us are storytellers, some of us are scientists, and we were all just kind of diving together and discovering this place and producing media about it. It's become more and more and more formalized. We were all volunteers for a very long time. Up until Octopus Teacher, we were all pretty much voluntary. Um, and we have got two big goals. The first is to connect people to the natural world in a general sense. Um, and then more specifically, we're interested in the long-term protection of the Great African Sea Forest, but also other kelp forests around the world. Um, and kelp forests are really important. They cover 30% of our global coastlines. They are incredibly important for biodiversity. I mean, I think it was Darwin that said, and I don't know if he was right, but he said he felt like there would be a much greater impact on biodiversity if the kelp forests were to disappear than if the land forests would disappear. I don't think that was true, but that was his impression. But basically, they are these incredible underwater environments with really, really, really good structure. And that structure creates an incredible habitat for thousands of different animals. It's a nursery area for baby animals. Kelp forests protect coastlines from swell by kind of breaking the force of the waves, which is going to be more and more important as we face sea level rises and more extreme weather events because of climate change. And nobody really knows about them. That's the crazy thing. They cover 30% of our global coastlines. And Octopus Teacher was pretty much the first time that they were showcased to the world at a global scale, on a global platform.
That's well. One thing I read was that 1,000 species can live on an individual kelp.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, we're starting a project, my colleague, Dr. Yanis Lanchkov. He's a taxonomist, and he started this project called 1001 Sea Forest Species. And the idea was to document and tell stories about 1001 species. And he thought he'd be doing it, for the rest of his life. But as soon as we started looking, even at the animals we already know, I think we're up to more than 600 without even having to look too hard. So that's what's so amazing about this kind of structure that the kelp provides. There are animals that live in the holdfast, which is the root system of the kelp. There are animals that live inside the kelp stipe. There are animals that burrow into the blade of the kelp. There are animals that live only on the leaves of the kelp. Pretty much every kelp stipe has a kind of overlord in the form of a kelp limpet. And a kelp limpet, it just looks like a shell that's stuck on the kelp,
Right.
but they grow really, really big. And there can only be one kelp limpet per kelp stipe. So what will happen is sometimes you'll find two together and they'll be having some massive battle. And the bigger one will generally find a way of getting his shell underneath the lip of the other one and throw him off. And then he'll become king of the kelp stipe. So there's all this kind of strange micro level slow motion drama going on. And as you get to know an environment better, you become more and more aware of those stories.
Everything's about awareness, right?
Yeah,
And so it's funny is one is I'm thinking about each kelp it has its own little village.
completely. Absolutely. A lot of the animals are territorial, so they live in a particular place, in a particular neighborhood.
You should see the smile on my face. It's so cool. I mean, and it's amazing how much we don't know. That's the thing that always amazes me.
Yeah.
It's this crazy thing. So one of the I think was is it the, one of your guys saying in the sea change thing, "Remember we are wild," or "You are wild." Is that your guys saying?
I think it's remember you are wild. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great saying because we all forget about that.
We do. And I think a lot of people maybe don't even understand it. But I think, we've only been sort of semi domesticated for the last 10,000 years. Um, for 290,000 years before that, we were total nomadic hunter gatherers. And we needed to understand nature. We needed to be able to read it like a book. Otherwise, there was no way we could have survived. So, yeah, as our lives have become more comfortable, we've become more and more disconnected from the systems that keep our species alive and, all the millions of species that we share our planet with.
Well, and that's something you didn't, you came by it naturally, but, speaking of nature, but you came by it yourself though, and you knew that you needed to be in the wild to be aware of that. That's the kind of cool thing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the kelp, that's one of the things I read was it's got a overall decline of 28%, but I can't, I'm looking at some notes I wrote. So if you think I have that good of a memory, I don't at all. But anyways, something about it has a 38% decline. Is that true?
So, the Great African Sea Forest, we're really, really lucky. It's faring pretty well, but kelp forests in other parts of the world are not faring well at all. So there are two things that are happening. I think uh, often what you have is some kind of climatic shift will make a kelp forest very vulnerable. From what I understand, in Australia, for example, there was a specific ocean current that was warm that kind of spread around the coastline in southern Australia, and there was a species of urchin that traveled in that current, that shouldn't have been there, and that urchin has no predators, and it just devoured.
Right.
It was called the Great Southern Reef, and I think there's very little of it left. In California, there's a similar thing where the purple urchins are devouring the kelp. Um, And the big problem there is that I think they're called the sunflower starfishes that used to keep the purple urchins in check.
There, yeah, I'm actually doing an episode with somebody on the issue, and it's all on the Western coast.
Mm. So they had a wasting disease, and I think they've just figured out what caused it.
Right.
And I think those kelp forests have not been able to recover. The other thing that's happening is obviously as our oceans warm, the colder water is found at the poles. So it feels like kelp forests are kind of shifting more extreme north or more extreme south to follow that colder water.
Which will mean if the kelp goes away, the erosion on the land, and then you got the sea urchins getting rid of them too, and then the 1,000 species that live on that one kelp are going to be a threat as well. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they won't just be a threat; they'll disappear. You're looking at a massive, kind of a huge scale biomass loss and biodiversity loss, and it's happening. I mean, I watched a film in Norway the other day, where places that used to be full of kelp and full of life have just become total barrens. Like oceanic deserts.
And well, that's a nice thing to think about right now. It's horrible. I mean, everything's crazy, and here in the States right now, I can only imagine with everything else. Just one more thing to be happy about, right?
I think the good thing about it, though, is that it's a fast growing. It's not really a plant; it's an algae, but it's a fast growing algae, and it can recover. And there are all kinds of projects underway all over the world to reforest kelp forests in the same way that we're reforesting land forests.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So how did you get and I'm gonna kinda switch now. I wanted because I know you've got some time limits. How did you get involved? Because My Octopus Teacher, obviously, most people listening, if they haven't seen it, you guys need to see it because it's an amazing film. How did you get involved? And tell me the story about that. And I think I told you Jennifer Mathers has been on, the scientific advisor, and
Oh,
she's amazing.
yeah.
Well, let me tell you something about her, and I don't know if I've ever said this live on the show, but I've never been more intimidated to talk to somebody than her because she's the smartest person. She's so smart.
She's really smart.
Oh my gosh, she sent me like 5 she goes, "I'm gonna send you some papers to read." I'm reading the papers, I'm looking in a dictionary every 5 words because I didn't know what the words were, and I was so nervous to talk to her,
Yeah.
and when we did the episode, I said something, and she basically was being kind, but she made me s the world knew what a goofball I was when I was doing that thing. She's so sweet, but man, she's intimidating. Her intelligence is intimidating. She was amazing.
Yeah. And I think there are very few people with the vastly diverse interests of human psychology and cephalopods.
No.
And it was very helpful for us because she was really able to describe how an octopus thinks
Right.
from a very scientifically informed perspective. So I mean, octopus teacher. I started diving with Craig. Um, he had become a mentor because I was interested in learning to adapt my body to the cold, and I was really blown away by the animals that he was finding underwater. Um, and even in those very early dives with him, I had these truly inspiring, magical, inexplicable experiences. So Craig and I dived together, and we'd probably been doing that. We'd probably been diving together for about 6 months. Um, and he asked me. He hadn't made a film for a very long time. He'd kind of sworn he would never do it again. But he knew that I'd always wanted to make documentaries. And he said, "Look, I think I've figured out what I want my next story to be." And I had this crazy experience with an octopus. And he told me the story, and I just had this like very, very clear feeling in my body, like everything just lit up, and I knew that this was something that I wouldn't be involved with. And he asked me if I'd help, and that was the beginning of My Octopus Teacher. We had no budget. Um, I had to quit my job with Save Our Seas Foundation, which was a huge risk. We didn't know if we'd ever finish the film. We certainly didn't know if we'd ever sell it. We just had this absolute blind passion, and about 10 hard drives full of incredible footage, um, and all of Craig's memories, I guess, of this year that he'd spent with the animal that he called the octopus teacher.
Well, you just I mean, magic, you came up again. It's such a great film, and anybody that have seen it feels the same. Obviously, the world felt the same way too. What a great experience!
It was a great experience. I mean, I have an uncle who I really love, and he phoned me after he saw the final version of the film, and he'd seen a few of the rough cuts, and he just said, "What a wonderful thing to have done in your life."
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way it's ever been described. Spending hundreds of hours diving in the Great African Sea Forest, really getting to know it, really starting to imagine how you wanted certain shots to look and how you wanted certain sequences to feel. And doing that in your backyard and going straight back to the edit suite and just being able to translate those experiences and those feelings and just pour it straight back into the scenes that we were cutting. I think very few filmmakers have been able to make a film like that. And I don't know if I ever will be able to again, but I'm incredibly grateful. It was definitely one of the best experiences in my life.
Well, the first one is you never know you don't know what you don't know. So you do whatever you do, but also that you use the word blind passion.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, and naivety. I mean, it was my first project, so
Right.
I just went for it. I just completely jumped off the cliff and put every bit of energy and focus I had into making that film.
Well, and again, jumping off that cliff is that when you are naive, you don't know what you can't do. You just assume you can. You don't know what the limits are. As you now that you've been making more films, you start learning what some of the limits are, so you just don't realize it.
But I mean, there were a lot of times where, I was kind of terrified that I wouldn't be able to finish it, terrified that I wasn't doing things right. There were many, many moments of abject terror.
That's the best part about it. Think about it. You survived. You went jumped through the fire, and look what you got.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that film. The world blows up. Your life completely changes, and then so the next one was the Pangolin Story, right?
The next one was actually Mercury.
Oh, Mercury's next, but that's funny because I just saw My Mercury. Let's talk about that, and then we'll go to Pangolin because I loved My Mercury. I really loved it. I mean, it's intense, but it's a great story.
It sure is intense.
Yeah,
So, Mercury, I mean, it's a film that happens kind of also on the shores of the Great African Sea Forest. Eve Chesselet, the main character, is a very different character from Craig in most ways, but then there are these strange similarities, this kind of mad obsession with wildness.
great way to explain. Perfect. You couldn't put it better. Mad obsession. Sounds perfect.
Yeah, they both have a mad obsession with wildness, and they both are completely kind of invigorated by the extremes of the natural world. And I made Mercury because Jinx Godfrey, who'd been my consulting editor on Octopus Teacher, who's a great mentor of mine still, she was going to edit it, and she was really excited about the story, and she asked if I'd like to be involved. I was only the co-director. The film was made and
Only is not now. You were a co-director. You weren't only. Let's just go with that.
I mean, I think I contributed a lot to the film, and I was certainly part of the team. But I would say that this is very much Joelle Chesselet's film, and that's the sister of Eve. Eve is her brother,
Right.
and it was. I mean, it was emotionally an incredibly challenging film to make because anyone who's seen it will realize that we go to some very dark places.
Oh, very dark. What did he call the vid? Was the name of the video that he was using when he was doing his own film? Vid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Vid is this great kind of
Character.
uh yeah, this great castaway like character. And he's a video camera, and he's Eve's only companion during most of the time that he's on that island by himself. And you get this incredibly unfiltered window into Eve and who he is and how he behaves and how he sees the world through the way that he interacts with this video camera.
It's a bit of a Robinson Crusoe a little bit. I mean, because he's on that island by himself. I mean, and you can see where he borderlines, borderlines everything.
Yeah, it's kind of Robinson Crusoe meets Grizzly Man in a way.
Yeah,
But I mean, Eve is a very, very sincere conservationist to this day.
clearly.
Yeah, the man really does dream seabirds, and he truly understands them.
By the way, those birds they're so pretty. Those eyes, unbelievable.
Yeah, the gannets. Oh, gannets are beautiful birds. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We spent a lot of time wading through gannet guano.
Oh, I know. You can see it in the film. It's crazy.
um, yeah, I think Mercury was much harder for an audience. It's very confronting. It really forces us as humans to ask difficult questions around what we're doing to the natural world and what our responsibility is when it comes to making those imbalances right,
Right.
and kind of where the line is. How far should we go?
And I don't want for the audience. It's a film that's available. You can find it if you stream. I forget. I think I got it on Amazon or something like our Prime or whatever. But I don't want to say anything about it because there is a balance that really affects him mentally at some point, whether he's trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think you know, I was so excited to make My Octopus Teacher because I'd done so much work and written so many stories, told so many stories about the negative impact of people on nature. And what excited me about Octopus Teacher is I got to tell this beautiful story about the positive impact, the healing impact of nature on human beings. And I think what was interesting about Mercury is it also looks at the impact of nature and being immersed in nature on the human psyche, but it's far more complex and far more kind of controversial than what you see in My Octopus Teacher.
What's funny is I never thought I didn't I I'm not a real deep thinker, as much as I try to act like I am sometimes. So, but you know what? Both films, actually all three films, we'll get to the pangolin in a second. There's an intensity in all of them. They're all intense at some level.
Yeah, probably because they are.
Yeah, you're intense, so it must be you. You're the
Yeah.
intense
Well,
person.
I think a lot of filmmakers are intense.
Well, I think some are more than others, and I'm not going to say what wildling that may be. But anyway, so and what I liked about that film, because a lot of it was just the film was actually shot by Vid.
Yeah.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FURREALPODCAST, covered by most pet insurance.
The next one is Pangolin, the Pangolin Story, and let's talk about that because that just came out a few months ago on Netflix, and I loved it, and there's a lot of reasons why I loved it.
Yeah. So I didn't think I'd make a film about a pangolin ever. I love them, and I was really distressed about what's happening to them. They are the most trafficked wild mammals on Earth.
Right.
Sadly and shockingly, the most trafficked mammals on Earth are actually human beings. But that's a different story. So I got a tease in my inbox from this guy who'd been emailing me and emailing me and emailing me. And at the time, I was getting so many emails because it was just after we won the Oscar for My Octopus Teacher. And this dude was just so persistent that eventually I watched this tease that he sent me. And immediately, I'd seen a lot of photographs of pangolins, I'd seen the odd bit of footage, but this was just beautiful. I just saw these animals in a completely different way. The footage was so intimate, so kind of intentionally crafted. And I could just feel that the team that had captured those images had a deep connection to and understanding of pangolins. And I also realized that really so few people even know that pangolins existed. So I was excited that I'd have an opportunity to kind of tell a story about an animal that has remained hidden to so many people, and also an animal that is so, so, so severely threatened.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I know that you can tell you're a writer. I love words, right? And you just use the word, another word that you use that talks about you. You talked about intense, but all your films you just used it intimate. All your films that I've seen, at least, has an intimate story to it, and I think that's the thing that draws people in.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm a woman.
Well, trust me, I think women are best in almost everything. I have two daughters, so I know exactly what that is, but there's just something about it, though. But you're way in tune. But magic and intimate and intense. I'll get some more for you in a second. Just keep going.
So, and I think the other really nice thing about pangolin is, especially after the intensity of Mercury and the complexity of Mercury, I was excited to be able to tell a story that we didn't know if it would have a happy ending. We couldn't guarantee it. But we thought there was a pretty good chance that we'd be able to tell this like wonderful, intimate, heartwarming story about a little pangolin that is raised by somebody who loves it, and is able to go back into the wild. And there was a lot of debate about how much we should focus on the plight of pangolins and the poaching crisis. But for me, because people know so little about pangolins, the main thing I was interested in was just like giving a big global audience the chance to fall in love with these completely enigmatic little animals.
They're bizarre, and as I mentioned, so I used to spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia too, and I was in Malaysia up in an area north in a town called Ipoh, I can't remember what's pronounced, but we're driving along the road. It's nighttime, and here was this on the side, some people with this thing. And because I live in Texas, I thought it was an armadillo because they kind of look like an armadillo. When you see them in person now, I would see the big difference. And I said, "Is that an armadillo?" I said, "No." They kept going, "Pangolin, pangolin." And I go, "What?" I had no idea. And then, so I've always been really, really interested in them. And of course, I think I told you this. I did a episode on pangolins with somebody from the IUCN who's an expert on pangolins, and we really dug into how they're traded, they're, for the keratin and all the other weird stuff that they do with it, which is typical of Asia anyways, but it learned a lot about these guys. And the fact, like this, I just think it's you doing that story just to me is, I think people need to know. Most people don't know what they are.
No, most people don't know what they are, and they're actually very different to armadillos. If you do want to speak to an armadillo
Oh yeah.
specialist, I know just the person.
Yeah. Then we'll talk about that. Of course, I have one that digs in my front yard.
Already.
I see them all the time. I'm in Texas.
Yeah, they're super cute. Um, yeah, and but they are very different, and I guess it's the kind of armadillos have very leathery skin, whereas and pangolins are the only mammals that are covered in hard overlapping scales.
Scales, yeah. So let me ask you a question. So we've got those 3 films. I know you're working on a project now, and I want to ask you about that. What have you gained from doing all 3 films? Because again, you had an intimate relationship with all these guys. How does that affect you? Does it make you want to do more? Obviously you're a wordsmith, but how does that affect you?
I mean, Octopus Teacher truly probably the most transformative thing I've ever done in my life, the most transformative thing that's ever happened to me.
For a variety of reasons.
For a variety of, the first one is having the opportunity to just get to know the natural world so well on a daily basis like that. And you can only do that in an environment that's literally in your backyard. To get to know the animals, to get to predict what the conditions are going to be like, to go diving sometimes and see absolutely nothing and go in the next day and the entire ocean is just full of swarms of like glowing, pulsing jellyfish species, and being eaten by fish and eating each other and drifting down to the seafloor and being eaten by anemones. And when you're spending that much time in a specific place in nature, it becomes a character in your life. And that was super powerful. Then professionally,
Your life changed overnight.
overnight, I always say the film went out, I think it was Monday, the 7th of September, 2020. And the next morning, our website had crashed and we were getting an email every 3 seconds. And that went on for months. So it was very overwhelming and very intimidating. It wasn't all good.
Right.
But in terms of the doors that it's opened for me, and as I've kind of had more time to sit with it, I've learned to manage it better and better and make sense of it all. And of course, you meet the most incredible people through making a film that resonates. You know, Craig's now, his main mentor, or one of, is Jane Goodall. Um, you know, I've been able to travel all over the world because of My Octopus Teacher. Mercury was a super challenging film to make. It forced me to ask myself questions, kind of hard ethical questions and also psychological questions, um, that never would have entered my head if it hadn't been for that film. And it forced me to appreciate the kind of harshness of the natural world, because often I think we have a sort of Disneyfied view of nature, and that's not necessarily true. In fact, it's not true. And you have to be able to metabolize the brutality and the beauty and the gentleness, the peace of it. And then Pangolin, yeah, I got to spend so much time in the bush, which was amazing because that was something that I done a lot when I was a child. And I got to really understand this animal, which, when you look at it, even in real life, when it's right in front of you, you feel like you're looking at something that's been CGI.
I know. Prehistoric.
Yeah, it just doesn't look real. It's like being in the presence of a dinosaur.
Right.
And every pangolin is different. I met a few of them. Kulu, who was our main character, was like highly independent, just wanted to be wild, sort of tolerated humans. Um, but there were other pangolins that just absolutely love people, and you'd
Oh, really?
kind of pick them up and they'd cuddle into your neck and you know, stick their tongue into your shirt. They just, and you wouldn't think when you look at this kind of scale encrusted, strange looking creature with no vocal cords that it would enjoy being cuddled and held, but some of them do. Yeah, all these things change you.
Well, I was thinking while you were talking about it, they all give you, I think your perspective continually evolves,
Definitely.
from that standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk, or you've got some projects you want to talk about, the projects you're working on. I wanted to ask you a question that I was thinking would be a cool one to do. But I hope all the films you make show some kind of personal relationship with the animals. I just love the way your approach is. I'm just one of those big, soft-hearted, big dummies, but I love the way you do it because I am the guy that has tears in movies. So
Well, thank you.
I do. I really do. So I hope you have, do you want to talk about what you're doing now, or do you want to keep that under wraps until it comes out, or what?
And I mean, I think the one thing I would like to talk about,
Sure.
and I'm not sure that I think my next film probably won't be, and I don't know, but it probably won't be the story of, you know, one human, one animal, which is kind of what I've done so far. Mercury was a bit different. But I think what I'm quite interested in now is looking at how privileged I've been in terms of the access that I've had to the natural world, even though I grew up in a very civilized, bustling city, and then asking questions about all of the millions and millions of people in the world who have never been connected to nature just because they don't have that access. You know, and there are many, many millions of South Africans who grow up not very far from the ocean, but are very seldom able to go to the sea. Sometimes for economic reasons, sometimes cultural reasons, and that's something that I'm interested in exploring because I think as we face more and more problems in terms of environmental health, we're going to need advocates, and those advocates are going to be the people who have a connection to nature.
Which means kids.
It means kids, absolutely.
I want to interject something, and this is a story. So I don't. Again, you and I haven't talked as much as as much as you're going to now. You're going to get stuff from me all the time. I apologize, but so one of the things I do is I travel all over the world and work with kids in conflict zones or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm going to Ukraine in 2 weeks to do it again. I've second time in there. But regardless of that, I was in Uganda, and there's a woman. as you know, in Africa, you can see wild animals everywhere. As soon as you get out, you can, as a matter of fact, you fly in Nairobi, you get out of the airport and you see giraffes running around in the field, kind of a thing. So I was in Uganda, and this woman who was actually, she's from Brussels and the Brussels area. Anyways, she moved to, was had a job. I'm going to make it as short as possible. So she moved to this area to run to do a nonprofit there, and it was it was a scheme that somebody came up. Ends up finding out there's a child prison there, which was a reformation thing. She decides she's going to help these kids. So she starts helping these kids, and she now has this huge orphanage. She's pulling these kids out of prison because they were on the street. You know how it works in Africa. So, anyways, she's taking care of these kids. So I'm out there working with her, doing some stuff with her. But it turns out these kids had never seen wild animals because they'd lived in this little. And
It's very, very common. Yeah.
so they had their form of a zoo. It's not what we would think of as a zoo. So I took this group of kids that are in Africa that are surrounded by more wildlife than anybody I know. And they took them there. And these kids were so full of wonderment because they were seeing animals that lived probably, 5 miles outside of the village they just never seen. They saw these there, and they're in Africa. So I love the idea of what you're talking about, trying to get people to see nature, because it changed these kids for life. Not
Yeah.
I didn't, but just them seeing that thing was just watching their kids' eyes. It was amazing.
No, it does. It does. It does change things for life. And I think for so many of us who have grown up with easy access to nature, we completely take it for granted. So I'm working on a film project, it's actually a project that Craig started, and something that Sea Change has been doing we've been doing it for 5 years now. And it started off, we were creating a song called the Seaforest Anthem, which is a song kind of dedicated to the sea forest. And Yo-Yo Ma, the great cellist, was involved.
I know Yo-Yo Ma.
So he's involved as well. But our main character is my incredible friend Zolani Mahola. And in South Africa, Zolani she's a national treasure and a national icon and an incredible role model for, millions and millions and millions of South Africans. And she's a musician, she's a singer, but she's also an unbelievable freediver. And the film is about how she kind of formed this connection with the ocean and how it transformed her and how it reconnected her with her culture and her family. So yeah, I'm very excited about that project, and it's the first thing we make is a film, but we're working on a podcast as well.
Well, yeah, I can't wait to hear that. It's funny, Yo-Yo Ma, I listen to probably once or twice a week.
Wow, he's a truly wonderful man.
Oh my, well, if I was a director and, of My Octopus Teacher, I could probably call up Yo-Yo Ma. He may talk to me too.
He actually called us up. His organization called us up, but it
Really?
was through the South African National Biodiversity Institute. Like I said, My Octopus Teacher changed everything, and one of the best parts of it was suddenly we're able to speak to people we would never
You have access.
they would never have known who we were before. Yeah.
Well, but by the way, you should have had access, because what you did was, I mean, the film is all your films are such great films that you should be given access to it. There's a reason why.
Thanks, Mark. It's good.
And so now I'm going to do my typical American humor. You probably won't like it, but I think it's kind of funny. So when Yo-Yo Ma called, did he call up and say, "Yo, it's Yo-Yo Mom"? Yo-Yo Mom. I just
It was-
want I'm sorry. This is how I go.
it was more like his assistant. Well, no, someone who was Jillian. I think her name was Jillian. I can't remember her surname, but she was running his foundation. And she called Craig up on a Sunday afternoon, and he answered the phone, and she said, "Hi, I'm calling from the Yo-Yo Ma Foundation." And Craig's response was, "Listen, I'm terribly busy." And he had absolutely no idea who Yo-Yo Ma was, and he ended the call.
And didn't tell anybody either, I bet.
No, he told Swati, his wife, straight away, and she said, "Call that woman back immediately." And thank goodness he did.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell everybody the exact title. We know My Octopus Teacher, but give them the exact title of the other two films, where they can probably find them, how to get a hold of Sea Change Project, and all that stuff, because I want to get that information out. And for you guys listening, all that stuff's in the description, but let's get that out. And anything else that you can think of, the one would that one will help anything that you're passionate about, which is basically everything you do, I'm assuming. But Sea Change, how to get a hold of them, all that kind of stuff, and anything else that you can think of that'd be relevant for people to dig in and do some research.
Great. So the first thing is to have a look at Sea Change Project. We have a really great website at seachangeproject.com, and then we also super active on social media, especially Instagram. So it would really help if you follow us and sign up to our newsletter. And then to watch My Mercury. I believe it's on Amazon Prime in the States. And then to watch Pangolin, Kulu's Journey, which is on Netflix. And it's an original, so you can get it all over the world. Yeah, and those animals really need help, and they need people to know about them and to fall in love with them. So we really want as many people as possible to watch Kulu's Journey. And it's super easy to find.
Yeah, it's really easy to find. I saw it was so funny. I saw it when it first came out. And for you guys that are listening, if you haven't, watch the film first off. That's the most important. When you see the film, and if you want to get into some real detailed science of them, you can, as I mentioned, I've got there's an episode, just go back and look on Pangolin. It says Pangolin something or another with IUCN, but that'll get into some real more details of how they're being, taking advantage of. Now and they're re-educating there's local villages, they use them for meat and a bunch of other things too, but it's certainly worth looking at that. But see the film first, and all those films. My Mercury, I saw that. It's intense. Be ready to sit back and go, wow. But it's a film worth seeing. And obviously we're talking to, what are all the names I got for you now? I've got Intimate, Wildling, Intense. I can't remember what else. Magical, all these words. You got to listen to this great person we have on, people. So I have a joke for you. And I forewarned you that I'm going to tell you a joke, but I didn't tell you what it is. So get ready to cringe.
Yeah.
And be ready. But before I give it to you, for everybody else out there listen, I know you guys are cringing now that have listened before, but if you've got kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, or you want to bring on your parents and have them listen to be on the show and tell a thing, please send me an email at mcal@thefurrealpodcast.com. If you've listened before, I have kids on all the time. So if you do that, I'd really appreciate it. So here's the joke. You ready? And it's a pangolin joke.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready?
Yeah,
you're going to go, oh my God, I had to go through this. Okay, here it is. What do you call a pessimistic pangolin? Do you have any idea?
I'm thinking. But I think it's going to take too long. You're going to have to give us the answer.
Okay, a can't eater. By the way, you guys that are listening, they eat ants. They're ant eaters. They eat ants, but they eat ants.
And termites, but nothing else.
Yeah, and termites. Yeah, a can't eater. That was pretty good, I guess, for normal.
Well, they can't eat anything else.
Anyways, first off, thanks so much for taking the time. You've got a lot of stuff going in your life personally and all that, and you're so busy. And now you hang out with Yo-Yo Ma and Jane Goodall and all that stuff. But taking the time to be on my show, I so much appreciate it. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you for being so kind and positive about my work. It was really great to speak to you.
Well, it's easy to be because what you're doing are great things. And I know what a great person you are. And then for everybody else that's out there that's listening, as I always say, keep following. You guys are the ones that make a difference. The reason why I get to get famous people like this girl right on now is because of you guys. Someday maybe Yo-Yo Ma will come on. But anyways, thanks so much for listening.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Markakyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.